Let's talk about Rise. It was built from the ground up, right? It's AI native.
Yeah.
Was that easier than trying to wrap AI around Moxi's existing products?
It's definitely not easier. That's the reason we did it was because that's what we needed to do to actually drive how we want Rise to work. So I really believe very strongly that there's still a massive difference between what you can do when you really have your data organized, your infrastructure, and you have machine learning and AI layered on top of that to drive action and connect everything together. That is still not possible with wrapped AI. If you're wrapping an LLM, you're not going to have the same level of data access. You're not going to have the same performance. You're not going to have the same opportunities in terms of the types of use cases you can drive, especially the ones I'm most interested in are use cases that bring AI and automation together. And that's just very hard to do if you are just wrapping off the shelf AI.
Yeah. Is it true, or is it been your experience, or and maybe you guys will see this as Rise continues to unfold in the market, that integrating or migrating from you have a client and they're migrating from an existing system coming over to an AI native system, is that migration going to be easier in terms of bringing data over, like from a CRM or from marketing solutions?
As you probably know, data portability has probably been one of the hardest problems, not just in real estate tech, but in tech in general. Systems are all set up in different ways. Definitely being able to use AI tools helps with that because it's easier to parse out data. Even the off-the-shelf stuff lately, we've seen that, for example, a year ago, you couldn't have Claude make a spreadsheet from a PDF, and now it can do it pretty accurately. The state of the art is moving. So yeah, that's for sure going to help. I think the benefit is once you get your data in there, like once you actually get the data brought over, we can go and look in the data with AI and find interesting patterns and things about your database right away without you having to do a whole bunch of stuff. I think that's going to be the real power for people who move into products that have a more native AI posture, is being able to actually get value and mine that data that you never could before.
Yeah, that's super compelling because any brokerage leader who has been through a couple of migrations, I think it's very reasonable to say that they would continue to struggle with something they may not like simply to avoid shifting over, right?
Yeah.
So anything that can make that process easier, it's a byproduct, it's a selling point, maybe you don't always think about, but it's pretty valuable.
Yeah, for sure. Being able to look at the data. And again, that's why you need the data platform under the hood that actually brings everything together. Like being able to migrate things and then go and look at that data and use it right away. That really is it's a good reason to take the effort to like move.
Yeah. So still on Rise, what's different about, we're talking a few days after the formal release. What's different about it now than what was on the initial whiteboard from the start? Did you have to adjust any of the original vision?
So I wasn't there when the original vision was set up, but my understanding, I spent a lot of time when I first got here in September, really digging into what people wanted from Rise, right? And I haven't seen that change at all. The big vision was, how do we really close the loop of helping agents find business, win that business, close, and then keep people in a nurture posture so that they can buy again in the future or sell again in the future. That was the big idea, is like, how do we connect all of the products that we had together, build them in a new and modern way, and then have the data under the hood so that we could drive AI workflows. And that AI workflow vision came from Eric. He was very into that at his previous company on it. And that's the first thing we bonded over, was like, we were both from that perspective of, you can do so much when you bring automation, technology, and AI together, so much more. That was the core of the vision, and that's still where we're going.
What are some of the biggest hurdles you faced along the way?
I would say the biggest hurdle, which I don't know if this was unexpected or not, was bringing together the ActivePipe and MoxiWorks like platforms. Because, for example, MoxiWorks has always worked with really big brokerages, and we had tons of layers of hierarchy and super sophisticated sharing. ActivePipe had that too, but it wasn't the same. There were 3 levels of hierarchy in ActivePipe and 5 in MoxiWorks, and the data models were all a bit different, and everything just works like the authorization is different, permissions, like all those things worked a little bit differently. And it wasn't as obvious until we got into the process of really bringing it together, like how challenging that meshing of, especially from the data perspective, was going to be. I would say that was the biggest one. And we've gotten through that now, but I think everyone assumed, oh, we've got sharing here, we've got sharing there, we've got permissions here, we've got permissions there, we've got data, similar data on both sides. It should just work, but it's never like that with data.
Yeah, no doubt. One way where I think you guys may have an advantage is, you mentioned ActivePipe, but there are a lot of prop techs in the space who are your colleagues, so to speak, in the space, but they've acquired a lot of companies over the last few years.
Yeah.
And I want to dig into, maybe you can help me get started with the idea of like, does that create additional challenges for them to start rolling out larger AI initiatives, right?
Yeah. It for sure does, because basically like you're limited by the siloing that's in your product, right? There's stuff you can do now, like you can build bridges like with off-the-shelf AI between areas. You can pull data from one place and pass it over here, but it's kind of if you had a conversation with Claude from Anthropic, downloaded it and uploaded it into ChatGPT, right? It's not the same platform, so you're not going to get the same level of efficacy. And that is just, I've worked on a lot of platforms like that brought together a lot of different acquired products. And the first thing, if you really want to do this stuff seriously, the first thing you always have to do is actually make it work together at the data layer, make it work together at the platform layer. You're really hamstrung until you do that. So yeah, it's not like you can't do anything without that. You sure can, but it's very limiting.
Yeah. It just seems like those companies that have done so many acquisitions, it's just like they have these big horizontal platforms, right? And they need to get a little bit more vertical, and that's seems to be harder, right?
It's hard and expensive. Yeah, I heard about one company the other day that basically they ended up building a chatbot on each individual part of their platform because they couldn't bring everything together, right? And I won't name what company that was, but that's an offshoot of being in that position where you have everything totally siloed and separated. It just creates a lot of infrastructural problems, especially the deeper you get with AI and machine learning, the more problems that causes.
Yeah. How about once you get up and running, like Rise is up and it's going and you're out of beta, one thing I think I want to hear more about is, does this make it now like rolling out updates and new features? It tends to go a bit faster, right?
Yes.
You have your engineers can use AI internally.
Yep.
You have the data in place, your standards are all there. How does that affect, the pace of updates and new features?
Yeah, we're already seeing that. So one of the first things I did, there's 2 parts to this answer. One of the first things I did when I came to MoxiWorks was introduce monthly releases. So every 5 weeks we do a release. And that is a good way to just get the muscle memory of let's ship fast, let's get stuff out there, right? So we've shipped in the last 3 releases like 67 different features, right? So we're moving very quickly. And that's obviously because we have great engineers, but also we have a lot of AI under the hood that we're working with. And that goes a lot faster once you get the boulders into the wall. It's always very hard with any new product where it's like you have all these big things that have to get put into place, and like getting them in is always hard. But once you get that, you start iterating quickly, and we're already seeing that. And then AI features in particular aren't even blocked by that 5-weekly release process, because that's all backend, right? We can add agents, we can add functionality. That's the benefit of all the data already being there, everything already set up. We can add new experiences really quickly, and that isn't even gated by our normal release process because it's changing how the functionality works under the hood to make it better. So yeah, it definitely, we already are moving into a much faster posture in terms of iteration.
Getting into the nuts and bolts of your position a little bit, explain to me a little bit about the process of how you guys determine what features are going to come when. Is it, hey, we want to make this one better, so you prioritize feedback from the user, or like how does that all come together?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So there's a few different streams that you have to balance whenever you're doing product. One is that any new product really has to have a point of view. If you just build a pile of features and ship it, nobody wants to use that, right? They want to see what's your hypothesis? What are you trying to help us accomplish? And for us, it's that find, win, close story. Like, how do we tie everything together, really drive people, drive AI to action, help you, give you insights, but make those actionable and help you actually just do it in the same flow. That is the hypothesis. So we invest in that heavily because it is the reason that we'll be able to demonstrate really clear efficacy with Rise and why we think people should use Rise. That's why. That's going to be
Yeah.
the thing that's really different. Then, of course, we are a 15-year-old company. We have lots of customers. They want lots of things, of course, which is totally reasonable. It makes complete sense. We have to balance that with making sure we realize the benefit parity is what I always call it of our existing products, right? We have a lot of great stuff in our classic product suite, and we don't want to just throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of, oh, we're doing something new and we know we've forgotten everything we learned the last 15 years. We don't want to do that. So we spend a lot of time. We have a really strong product and design team. And we spend a lot of time just really thinking deeply, like, how should people use this? How should those features be brought in? How can we translate it and bring it into Rise in a new way that works a lot better? That is a really important piece of it. And then the third piece is the iteration that you were mentioning, right? We have given this to beta users. We have a number of customers on the platform, and we have them, they call us, they give us feedback through that product directly, and we spend tons of time talking to them. We obviously we call them the in-betweeners, little things like people are like, oh, this could be better, this could be tweaked. We do dozens of those every release, just little things that kind of make the product work better or just kind of iterates on what we do. So to me, it's always just balancing those three buckets and making sure you always have pieces of all of those things to drive the product forward.
What gaps did you think could most benefit from an AI native solution?
Yeah, I see the power of data and the power of just using data in a very grounded way. I know we didn't get this on video, but when we were talking right at the beginning, when you got here, just around the difference between what you can dash off and what you can really do with a very disciplined approach to technology. I've seen in industry after industry throughout my career how beneficial that is. And that's just something I feel really passionate about, is like, how do you bring that into industries that haven't had that before and help them start to think about their business in an AI first way? Because you actually have to think about the way your company is going to work. You have to think about it differently if you want to automate it, if you want to bring AI in, right? It's not just like, here, everybody, go use some AI and hope for the best. It's not like that. You actually have to redesign your entire operation over time. And I don't think people really understand that at first when they engage with the technology. And I think once they do, it starts to create this snowball effect, which is just super powerful. And I just love to see that. So that's the opportunity I saw here coming to MoxiWorks.
Nice. The point you just brought up, I have asked that of other executives in the industry. It's like, how does today's real estate brokerage, let's say you have just some sort of mid-size independent, not one of these larger national brokerages that has a ton of resources and CTOs and all that kind of thing, but a standard brokerage that you have to, like you said, you have to get them to rethink. So should they hire a CTO if they haven't had one before? Should they hire an AI consultant or bring someone on that knows how to rearrange this, how to collect their data, how to standardize it? These are big questions and it's totally understandable that a real estate broker or an owner of a brokerage, they didn't come into this industry to become software consultants or there was a time they can just buy a tool, hope their agents use it, right? And that's great. They're doing their job, they're supporting their teams. That's great. But it's a whole different animal now. To compete, they're going to have to adopt faster than they realize. And I think there's going to be some challenges on the horizon as a result of that.
Yeah, there definitely still is also a crawl, walk, run. People need to kind of get comfortable and start thinking about it. But yeah, if you want to go from even crawling to walking, but definitely walking to running, you have to rethink your business. Whether you do that with a consultant or whether the nice thing about business owners and business operators is they do actually know what their business has to do in a very deep way. The main thing, what I was always saying to people at Pure is it's all about modularity, right? How do you break it down in a way that is modular, and you can think about all the steps, right? Because like when you're telling a human how to do something, you just say, hey, go do this thing, and you just assume they totally know how to do it. Well, that doesn't work with automation. That doesn't work with AI, right? You have to be like way more explicit about your own assumptions also about like when I tell somebody to go do something, what do they do, right? People just make all these assumptions about what they do and they're always wrong. That's not at all what they do. So that's, if you want the consistency of AI and automation, eventually, if you're going to, especially if you're going to build it out yourself, you have to think that through.
Yeah. One thing that worries me, kind of going back to what we were talking about before we hit record, was like all of these tiny vibe coded point solutions that are emerging.
Yeah.
And they know how to work the algorithm. So they may get their ad put in front of some team leader or a broker who thinks, oh, hey, here's this innovative AI tool. But as we mentioned, without a lot of data behind it and an existing structure, that could ultimately fail or just be an unsuccessful product.
Yeah.
And therefore, are we just perpetuating some of the cynicism that still exists about AI?
Yes. This is the third AI hype cycle I've lived through professionally, and it keeps happening, right? It just, people get really excited. They go buy a bunch of stuff. They don't know the difference between how things are built and what's good and what's bad. And then they go and try to use it and they can't actually change their business with it because it wasn't designed to do that. And so then they get frustrated and throw it all out the window. For sure. And I would expect that to happen again. And that's to me why us being really grounded in there's not just AI. It's not like we're like, hey, magical AI, go do the business for us. No, that's not how it works. The way it works is with data and automation and thoughtfully applied AI to solve specific problems in the context of a broader workflow that actually works for your business. That's gonna always be, that's what I've been working on for 15 years. And that's always it works. It works because it takes your business into consideration and it's not just like flinging glitter in your eyes. And that's eventually, that's what people come back to is like, that's how you get the real efficiency and drive the real value.
Yeah. And you mentioned this in this media briefing we had on Rise the other day. It still needs to solve a problem.
For sure.
Yeah. You can't just, I often say that efficiency isn't enough, right? There has to be a benefit to the consumer, to the end user. And in case of real estate, it's the buyer and seller. But what problem is it solving? It has to be like any other software or any other business tool you implement, right?
100%. And with new technology in particular, people lose sight of that sometimes because it's exciting. You know, I mean, we saw this with previous AI generations. We saw this with people moving to the cloud. It was like, oh, we're going to move to the cloud. Like how and why? And there was all this money wasted, right? Whenever there's a new technology, like a lot of money ends up getting wasted just because people they get excited, they jump on the bandwagon, but they don't have a plan for their business. Like you need a plan for your business, not just, oh, hey, I'm going to use this thing and it's going to suddenly solve all the world's problems. Like that isn't going to happen. No technology can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one benefit about the consumer adoption of AI is obviously cranking, right?
Yeah.
In multiple use cases, we're talking to our phones and computers more. We're all building our own little software products here and there. And so everyone's becoming a lot more comfortable with it. And especially in real estate, it's migrating to search, all these sort of things. I'd like to get your opinion on this. This is more of a comment than a direct question. Like, I think that pressure coming inward on real estate is going to help, right? We've seen it in some cases. There's some consumers. I have a friend who's a kind of a top producer down in Southern California, and he's had to challenge some of his customers on what they're using AI to value their property or to make an offer. And sometimes it's close and he can work with it and work them through it without much conflict, but other times it's a problem. In either scenario, I think there's going to be situations where an agent is going to wake up and say, okay, I got to figure this stuff out, right?
Yeah, there's always this balance, especially in kind of service industry. We see this with doctors, we see this with lawyers. Everybody goes and asks ChatGPT, what should I do? And then you give it to the person and they're like, you're a little off. How do we adjust that? There's a risk in both ways. I think you're totally right. There's been a ton of consumer adoption. People are using this stuff all the time. For sure in real estate, everybody does that, right? You can go look up your house. You can go look up stuff. You can find comps. I think that For a real estate agent or a brokerage, you're positioning around expertise, hand holding, trust. This is one of the biggest transactions you're going to make in your life. Do you really just want to ask ChatGPT and go with it? Right. But then that has to be supported with good technology so that it really comes across as expertise and not the brokerage or the agent has their head in the sand and never realized the last 5 years of technological development have happened. Right. So I think there's a really nice world there where if you are a modern looking, technologically savvy company and you are positioning as a human expert to hold people's hands and help them move through a very expensive and high risk transaction, that I think is the best of both worlds, because people don't trust you if you only use AI, and they don't trust you if you act like you never heard of it. You have to hit that middle where you're using the technology to the best of its ability and you're bringing that human touch and that human, because people need that, right? They need a guide. You're bringing that to them. I think that balance is where real estate brokerages and agents need to be. And it requires both understanding the technology, but also knowing when the human is better for the job.
Yeah. Are there any specific instances you think where it's more suited than others to have a human in the loop?
Yeah. Would I hire a real estate agent if they just went and did all their comps with AI? No. I want someone who knows. I have my house on the market right now. I picked a person who knows my market super well in Colorado. Yeah, I picked someone who lives in my neighborhood. I have a historic home. It's 120 years old. I picked someone who knows historic homes. I picked someone who knows people who buy
Nice.
120-year-old houses. I picked someone who can explain to a potential buyer what you need to know when you buy a 120-year-old house, because it's not like an average home purchase, right? So there's still, I think that kind of thing, especially with real estate, like there, I think still very much is that expert guide role of people who really understand your specific type of property. I don't think that's going away. I realize obviously we're all in, there's all kinds of stuff going on in the real estate space, but it's still a very important human relationship.
Totally. And that is very smart of you to hire an agent that knows that kind of specific, unique property. That's really valuable because they stand out. They have all kinds of unique characteristics. It's not a cookie cutter home, right? There are hurdles they need to see ahead of time that aren't there with a common, right, a house built 20 years ago or something, right?
Yeah, if they want the whole permit history of my house, they're going to just be sad, right? That's not the right buyer for my house, right? Because most of the 120-year-old history of this house, permitting wasn't even a thing. But that kind of stuff, like being able to explain that to people and why certain things are the way they are. Yeah, that's like a human job. And that's my specific example, but I think we see those all over real estate where expertise matters and people spend a lifetime building a knowledge of a specific type of property, a specific area. And that is a really highly valuable thing. And it goes much deeper than what you can do with AI alone.
Yeah. And that's where real estate agents become like consultants.
Exactly.
They elevate above just managing the transaction or doing some marketing. And if you combine that kind of expertise and their ability to leverage technology to support that, where they stay on top of it, when technology is layered underneath, anything just from how quickly they can turn around comps or something, but with their expertise interlaced, that's super valuable. That's where I really think the future of the agent is going to be. Yeah. This is clumsy, but it's almost like this cyborg of real strong consultative advice, supported by really sharp AI tools, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's absolutely where we're going. I always think of this kind of person as a spiritual guide, because there's going to be all this technology which can do all this stuff, right? But we as humans still need a spiritual guide to take us on whatever journey we're going on, and house purchasing and selling is one of the biggest ones, right? I don't see that going away, but I think agents and brokers do need to be smart about technology so that they look like that and not like they're just old fashioned. I think that's the benefit, is if you use technology in a very thoughtful and intelligent way, then you look like it's super deliberate, all the human things you do, that's how it should be.
Yeah, agreed. One last question for you. You came into a company that had a CEO with an AI background. Did that help your on-ramp into building Rise? If you came into a company that, say, maybe, I don't want to say antiquated, but wasn't quite ready to revamp or to take on a whole new product like this, I imagine you would have faced quite a few more challenges. It would have been a bit harder Like,
Yeah, I definitely joined MoxiWorks in large part because of Eric. Like when I met him, I was like, oh, we are very much on the same page with our approach to technology and our philosophy of how this can work. And I'm very specialized. I really focus very heavily on AI-driven workflows and blending these types of technologies and working on very deep data platforms with AI components. I probably wouldn't go to a company where they didn't want that or had no idea like why that was useful because it would
yeah,
be a waste for everybody involved. But definitely when I talked to Eric, like he said workflows and AI and was talking about it even before I even brought it up. And I was like, oh, okay, we're like totally aligned and just in terms of like the opportunity we see here. Cause it's honestly huge. There's a massive opportunity when you really bring good automation in and intelligence
yeah.
with AI into an industry that hasn't had it as strongly before as some other industries. There's a huge opportunity.
How do you're focused internally on building Rise and creating a good product for MoxiWorks. They in turn have to sell it to the real estate industry. How do you keep the consumer in mind when you're doing that, when you're building these
Yeah,
tools?
yeah, honestly, the consumer, that's a benefit of a platform because the consumer really has to have a place at the table also, right? There needs to be an equal consumer app and an equal consumer platform that is connected under the hood at the same data, the same platform, so that it becomes another feed that comes in. And that allows you to actually automate, not just for people inside the brokerage, but also including the consumer, because the data, that's the beauty of a data platform and a really strong automation posture is it's all coming into the same place. It's all integrated. So when I get data through, for example, a consumer app, it goes straight into the same platform and it can merge together and be used with AI in the same way that everything else can. That's the real power. Like when you really start to connect all those dots, including with the consumer, there's a lot of power there.
Yeah. What's going to excite you when you come into work tomorrow morning?
I'm very excited about the place we are with Rise because I love that iteration. Once you get all the big boulders in place and you're just starting to really show how you can drive value and show the benefit of taking this approach, bring in more data, hook it all together and start building out cool new experiences, like that starts to go much, much faster as we were talking about earlier. And that's the fun part, right? It's really fun to see people's eyes light up and see just all the additional benefit they can get that used to take years for such a feature to come out, and now you can start giving it to them very quickly because you made that upfront investment in shared data, shared infrastructure, shared platform. That's the phase we're moving into with Rise, and I like that phase a lot. I think it's very exciting.
Ashley, this was great. This is a lot of fun.
Awesome. Cool. It
No
was great
problem.
chatting with you. I appreciate the time.